we shipped. We started down south with our records. We always started in Louisiana, Texas, Mississippi, Georgia, all the southern states, because you could get on the air a lot faster, especially back then with hip hop. You can get on the air a lot faster. They didn't want you. They didn't always have their hand in your pocket. They just want you to come out there and do some shows for them. So if they made your shit hot, now they book you. What you would do usually, what you would do, you do a show for the radio station and one for a promoter, and the one for promoter would get you paid. Now you only owe them one show. That was their form of payola. Once they got that one show, then they had to pay like everybody else. But it's a different game, dude. It was a different game.
Damn. Did you ever, speaking of payola, did you ever, have to sweeten pockets to get your radio pushed, ahead of others? Or like, oh, okay, break down that whole thing.
See, that's the difference between now and then. I never had to give anybody any cash money myself, but what we had a commodity that had value. A 12-inch was worth $2 and some change. So if you ship the guy 50 12 inches, he can go get $100 off the motherfucker. Okay. If you had an album wholesale was like $560, $570, something like that. So it's the same weight. So it made more sense financially to do an album, because if you're going to ship the album versus the 12-inch, you got the same weight, but you got more value. So once you dropped your album, you can sell somebody, I don't know, 25 to 50 albums. You can cover a whole region. And then the distributors, but a lot of times they had independent record guys that worked for them. You send them a couple of boxes of records. They would sell them to the stores for cash, take the cash and go pay the independent guys, and then take that. And now they can sell records to their people, to the stores, no problem, because now the record is hot. And you come to town from the radio stations. It was all great, but nowadays there's nothing physical, nothing tangible for you to send nobody. You can't send nobody a goddamn file. How you gonna send somebody a file? They already got it anyway. Yeah, they don't need to, you can't entice nobody with something that's not tangible. That's real talk.
Yep. Let me take this time to ask everybody to hit that like button if you haven't already. This is your first time joining the channel and you like what you're hearing, please hit that subscribe button. You are tuned in to Not Without Alonzo. That is Alonzo Williams, the godfather of West Coast hip hop. I am Dusty Vision. Shout out to the chat. We have some great questions. Keep them coming. I'm copying and pasting all of them. Birdcliff TV Woodstock wants to know, who do you like better, Ruthless or Death Row? Maybe if I guess he's talking about comparing artists. That's a hard one.
That's a hard one, dude. Death Row definitely had the cuts, though, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think in that sense, party cuts and everything to this day.
I mean, if you go back and grab that damn Above the Rim soundtrack, dude, that thing was dude, come on.
I know a place where we can go outside and have some fun.
Ruthless had N.W.A, Easy Does It, 100 Miles of Running, Michel'le.
Can't forget Bone Thugs.
But Ruthless, Snoop, that's done. Dre, okay. Tupac, dude, it's on my phone right now. I may have a couple of Ruthless songs, but I got a whole lot of Death Row. Death Row was the first label, man, that did not diversify. They just went straight for the jugular vein on the gangster tip. They had no slow records, none. They ain't never like no woman, no artist on Death Row, except for Tupac, had any sympathy for a woman. He had a little sympathy. He had Brenda Had a Baby, I Ain't Mad at You, and not I Ain't Mad at You. Brenda Had a Baby, and
Keep Your Head Up.
Keep Your Head Up. Okay, he did appeal to the females from a street perspective. And he ain't had no love songs. Ain't nobody had no Ruthless didn't make no love songs. Death Row had Michel'le. They were a little smoother with Michel'le, and I can't think of nobody else. But that's enough shit.
Yeah, you said Michel'le used to win all your contests back in the day, huh?
No, that was Joel.
I mean, Jewel. I'm sorry. Someone said Death Row, and I take that back. Jewel. R.I.P. to Jewel. I definitely meant Jewel. She used to smash on him, huh?
Yeah, all the time, man. Somebody just dropped the artist. Martin just said something, man. Jimmy Z. Jimmy Z was on Ruthless, and he didn't get the same love that everybody else got.
I remember the name, but I don't recall much about Jimmy Z.
I think Jimmy Z was like an instrumental, if I'm mistaken, man. I think he had some kind of he was more of a instrumental. I can't tell you much about him either. I know he was on Ruthless. I know reason why I remember Jimmy Z because I had a partner of mine that rocked with us called Willie Z. Okay. And yeah, he's a funky flute player. Yeah, he's right. He was a flute player on Ruthless. I'm going to look him up, man, to see what he's working with.
You and Dre were talking recently on the show. And if you haven't checked out Legendary Connects, check it out. It's usually every Friday. Really dope with Lonzo Williams and Dr. Dre from Yo MTV Raps. But you mentioned that you had to pay a sound because you used a Bugs Bunny sample in your song.
Right.
Or you had to clear it or something like that. Can you explain that process? And even something that little, huh? You have to get that cleared.
When you messing with CBS, they don't take no chances. Nothing. They don't take no chances. So they always make sure that all dots are crossed, all dots are dotted, all T's are crossed, because they don't want no problems. We even had to get a clearance from Perry Mason to use one of his samples. We used a Perry Mason sample on one of the songs, and even on that Daffy Duck thing, it was like some appropriate music maestro. That was it. Some appropriate music maestro, and that shit cost us maybe $200 or $300 back then because nobody tripped on it. But we still had to get it clear because it was two major labels, and they didn't want no problem about each other.
Okay. Makes a lot of sense. You know, speaking of sampling, the beginning of hip hop was a free for all when it came to sampling and using other people's material. I mean, James Brown has sold billions of records if we include all the songs of his that were sampled, especially in the early days of hip hop. But when do you remember artists starting to say, "Oh no, hell no, I want a piece of that pie. If you're going to use even 2 seconds of my shit, I want a piece of that."
When?
Yeah, when do you remember that like being a thing?
Oh man, I think that was right after. I think Dre. I think, man, it had to be in the late '80s because it became so prevalent. It was like everybody's song was based on somebody else's song, and that's when Madeline Smith went into business to clear that shit. Because for a while, people wasn't tripping. For a while, they weren't tripping that hard. I'll put it that way.